team. My prayer for this morning is that we will see strongholds break and that we will see healing come in people's lives. Those matters of the heart are where I'm most passionate about, and you will notice a theme as you've watched me speak over the years that comes through very strongly on that. So it's no huge surprise that that's where we're going today. But yeah, I do genuinely believe that there's an opportunity this morning for healing and for freedom. And so come, sit, be vulnerable, be willing, and let's see what God nudges, what he pokes, what he smashes, and what he does in your hearts today. So the title of my message today will make sense, but it's Zebras and Strange Horses. Okay? So just to get your attention from the get-go, and that's my one joke. So yeah, we're done on the funnies. Today, I guess, I want to share some thoughts with you about the labels that we use in our life, identity, and brokenness. So I work in the child protection space, have done for a very long time. I've worked with vulnerable families and children for many years before that, kind of more than half my life now when I add it up, which makes me feel really old. But many of those young people, those families, those parents, there's mental health diagnoses, there's developmental diagnoses, and it's all complicated by immense trauma that people have experienced and the flow-on effect of that in people's lives and the way they view themselves and interact with the world. And a large part of what I do, particularly for little tackers, is gathering the information and the evidence to inform assessments and diagnosis. And there's lots of times that people are like, well, why are you getting a label? Why does it matter? It matters because the labels we use define how we see ourselves and how people treat us. And there's power in those labels and there's power in those names. And so because I'm often researching things and following different things on Facebook, those lovely algorithms give me so many different quotes. And there was one that I read that really stood out to me. Why do you need a label? Because there's comfort in knowing you are a normal zebra and not a strange horse. Because you can't find community with other zebras if you don't know that you belong. Because it's impossible for a zebra to be happy or healthy spending its life feeling like it's a failed horse. And it hit me really powerfully. Labels and diagnoses, they give us a framework to summarise our experiences and help other people understand what we do and why we do it. And there's a comfort in that. So in 2019, pre-bushfires, I might add, all right, I reached a point where I was struggling. Those of you who have known me for a long time know that there's aspects of mental health woven throughout my journey where I've struggled with different things, but this was different. So I was drinking about 8 litres of water a day. Water, okay? Second funny, look at me go. I always felt so dehydrated and dry in the mouth. I was having headaches, feeling really unwell. My sleep, which I've struggled with on and off since having children, really deteriorated, and there were nights that I was only getting a couple of nights quality sleep. I was freaking out. And I was going to the doctors and they were running all sorts of tests to try and work out what was going on, to try and find a diagnosis, to try and find out how to treat it. There was nothing medically to explain what was happening in my body. And then in the middle of a sleepless night, I had an epiphany, a revelation, a prophetic word, I don't know. But I just went, oh my goodness, it's anxiety. And with my history with psych degrees and different things, I kind of pulled up the tools, ran through my depression, stress and anxiety scales and was like, oh yeah, there we go. Stress and anxiety right up in the extremely severe scale. That'll explain it. And it was an instant relief. I had an explanation for what was wrong, and I could work with that. So the difficulty for me was that because of the history I've got with depression, I'm so good at recognising my thought patterns and the way they impact on my life that I'm constantly on alert for the thought patterns. I wasn't reading my body cues, and my body was screaming at me that I was experiencing anxiety, but I couldn't understand it. I couldn't pick it up. But the good thing was that through all my other experiences, I already had the tools to start dealing with this stuff, and I've, worked through a lot of it, and it still crops up. It's an ongoing journey, and part of that is just life circumstances. But once I realised that was what was going on, I was able to respond differently. And the relief of that label was really immense. It's continued currently, even now, to help me understand my body and my mind better and to view myself and my circumstances differently. I could actually breathe again. I wasn't unwell, I wasn't sick, I wasn't a failure, I wasn't a failed horse. I was a zebra, and I just happened to be experiencing anxiety. It was okay. And that understanding daily still helps. But the thing is, particularly in Western society, but across the board, labels like anxiety, depression, any sort of mental health diagnosis or addiction can all too often come to form a significant part of identity. And people start to see themselves as broken. And we see people who experience those things as broken. And so today, I really want to challenge our concept of brokenness. So I was on the panel for some job interviews a couple of years ago. It was for a role in an organisation that was founded on Christian values. And one of the applicants was a Christian person who, in their interview, really strongly expressed their faith and their values. It was a great interview. They often referred to broken people. And I know myself, I've often used that terminology, talking about people and talking about society. One of the other interviewers, though, he wasn't Christian. And he was genuinely confused. And he said to us afterwards, what is the go? Like, is that a Christian thing, thinking that people are by nature broken? And that struck me. I don't ever want people to think that as Christians, we just walk around thinking everyone who isn't Christian is broken. Like, that's not cool. Like, yeah, we need Jesus, but so do those of us who already have him. So I've struggled with it since then, and I've changed my language. But it really made me think about the way that we use that word and the way that that word defines identity. So Proverbs 18:21 tells us that there's power of life and death in the tongue. The labels we speak over ourselves, the people around us, and our community has power. And I cannot refer to people as broken anymore. I can't do it. I can't refer to society as broken anymore. I hold way too much hope for things to change to use that label. And I am not going to let that word define my interactions with the world, myself, or the people around me. So Matthew 12:20-21 speaks of Jesus and the fulfillment of a prophecy spoken about him back in Isaiah 42. He will not crush the weakest reed or put out a flickering candle. Finally, he will cause justice to be victorious, and his name will be the hope of all the world. That fulfillment of prophecy comes in the midst of miracles and healings. We see Jesus feeding those who are hungry, healing a man with a deformed hand. He heals the sick amongst his followers. And after this, he brings freedom to a demon-possessed man experiencing blindness and muteness. We're promised that Jesus' work will see that the bruised and bent reed will not be broken. We are promised that the flickering candle will not be snuffed out. So a bruised reed, a flickering candle, the experience of hunger or poverty, the experience of illness or injury, the experience of trauma, emotional, spiritual, and cognitive pain. They may be experiences of brokenness. but they do not have to become a label that forms our identity. Our identity needs to be in the hope that that reed is not going to be broken, in the hope that that reed will heal, in the hope that that flame will not be snuffed out, but it will be fanned back into flame, that justice and victory will become ours because of the hope in his name. So the labels that we accumulate that indicate brokenness, they might be an accurate description of our previous or current circumstances. They might help us to perceive and make sense of our experiences so we can take the next steps towards healing and wholeness. But they cannot define our identity. We need to hold them separate. So Ezekiel 37, hang on. Sorry, that's page 4. Back to front messes me over. I experience anxiety, but I'm not defined by that. When I think about my identity, that label doesn't even rank in who I am. It's just a thing that happens sometimes as a result of normal and abnormal circumstances. So sometimes the labels that form our identity are picked up through the words and actions of other people towards us. If you're told something often enough, it's hard to deny that it's true. That was the origin of a lot of my depression that I've overcome. But what I learned on that journey of healing is that if those labels do not align with what God says about us, they're lies. Do not found your identity on a lie. So we need to examine the labels that we use to define ourselves and our identity. Are we the strange horse? Or are we a bloody awesome zebra? How do we know though? How do we know that the labels we're using to define ourselves are the right ones? So I've got 3 thoughts that I think will help with identifying this. The first one is to know yourself. Too many of us don't know who we are, genuinely. Don't be afraid to know your story and acknowledge the pain. Sit, think about who you know yourself to be, examine it, take the time, question it. Consider that the truth might be different to what you think. Identify and examine the labels that you're using to define yourself. And really consider it. And just of a note, there's labels underneath labels, underneath labels, underneath labels. Our identity is like a whole filing cabinet, so there's always another layer. Secondly, know the season. There are times that we feel broken. There's seasons when it hurts and everything sucks. That's normal and it's okay. Know that that bad season is not a definition of who you are or your future. And then thirdly, know that God is with you. Know him and know his word, because that's our test. Does the way you think about yourself align with his promises? With the words of love, light, justice, and hope that he declares over us? He is there with you, even when you think he's not. He's watching, he's waiting. He's there in the midst of your feelings, your thoughts, and your experiences, and he's already working. He's already making ready the justice, truth, and hope for you to receive. So this is not the toxic positivity that we see in society. Oh, you've got a cancer diagnosis. Oh, it's going to be okay. I'm going to pray for you. I'm going to believe for you. Yes, we need to pray and believe for people, but we need to not veer into the whole thing of it's going to all be sunshine and rainbows. Cancer sucks. Okay? Not everyone is healed. Let's not go down that road of toxic positivity in our lives where we're lying to ourselves. We've got to be honest and genuine. This is not brushing aside a very real and very painful experience that we might have had, or relationships where we've been hurt. When we have experiences of trauma or pain that we've managed to survive, our brains remember how we survived. And they go back to those skills that got us through that yuck experience. And the next time we experience yuck, they go back there and they use the same skills. But we have the power to make an informed choice about whether those things are going to define who we are and whether we're going to respond differently. Not everyone knows they have a choice, though. It's hard work to undo a long-held identity of brokenness. Decades worth. I know this from experience. as I said at the start, this is why I keep sharing messages like this. This is my journey. It's where I guess I've got authority because I've lived it. I continue to live it. I speak from my own experiences of pain and recovery, and particularly today from my own battle to reclaim my identity from broken, unworthy to beloved. We can't be passive in this. It's actually a fight to reclaim our identity. We need to actively participate in an exchange with God, a prophetic exchange, an exchange of our current identity and interpretations of our experiences of brokenness for the restoration that God has promised us. So, Ezekiel 37, 1-10, tells us of a powerful prophetic exchange. The Lord took hold of me, and I was carried away by the Spirit of the Lord to a valley filled with bones. He led me all around among the bones that covered the valley floor. They were scattered everywhere across the ground and were completely dried out. Then he asked me, "Son of man, can these bones become living people again?" "O sovereign Lord," I replied, "you alone know the answer to that." Then he said to me, "Speak a prophetic message to these bones and say, 'Dry bones, listen to the word of the Lord. This is what the sovereign Lord says. Look, I am going to put breath into you and make you live again. I will put flesh and muscles on you and cover you with skin. I will put breath into you and you will come to life. Then you will know that I am the Lord.'" So I spoke this message just as he told me. Suddenly, as I spoke, there was a rattling noise all across the valley. The bones of each body came together and attached themselves as complete skeletons. Then as I watched, muscles and flesh formed over the bones. Then skin formed to cover the bodies, but they still had no breath in them. Then he said to me, "Speak a prophetic message to the winds, Son of man. Speak a prophetic message and say, 'This is what the sovereign Lord says. Come, O breath from the four winds, breathe into these dead bodies so they may live again.' So I spoke the message as he commanded me, and breath came into their bodies. They all came to their life and stood up on their feet, a great army. Then he said to me, 'Son of man, these bones represent the people of Israel. They are saying, we have become old, dry bones. All hope is gone. Our nation is finished. Therefore prophesy to them and say, this is what the sovereign Lord says. O my people, I will open your graves of exile and cause you to rise again. Then I will bring you back to the land of Israel. When this happens, O my people, you will know that I am the Lord. I will put my spirit in you, and you will live again and return to your own land. Then you will know that I, the Lord, have spoken, and I have done what I said. Yes, the Lord has spoken." We see here the power of the prophetic truth of God, restoring old, scattered, dead, dry bones into a living and breathing army. Hope is not gone. You are not finished. Come, breathe in his life today. By his breath, by his word, you will truly live. And those dark places where you've experienced brokenness do not need to define you any longer. I want to declare over us today a variation on Isaiah 61. So I'm going to get ads up on the keys while I speak. The sovereign Lord is upon you. The Lord has anointed you. You are the carrier of good news, justice and hope for others and to speak over yourself. You can experience comfort even when you are brokenhearted. Brokenhearted does not mean broken. No matter how captive you feel, you will be released. No matter what words and experiences have held you bound and restricted, Jesus is here to bring freedom to you from that prison. The cage will be opened and every chain will be broken. It is time for those of you who mourn to know that the time of the Lord's favour has come for you. To all who mourn, including you, he will give you a crown of beauty in exchange for your ashes, a joyous blessing instead of that mourning, festive praise instead of despair. You will experience righteousness, a being made right in the eyes of God in your character, in your mind, in your emotions, in your attitude, in your actions, and in your words. You will be a great oak, strong and stable with deep roots. The Lord has planted you for a purpose, and he will not forsake you. He will rebuild the ancient ruins in your life, the deep and dark experiences of brokenness where hope and identity was damaged long ago. He will revive them in you and for the generations that come after you. And he will use you to help rebuild those dark places in others. The ruins will be made whole, with deep foundations reinforced with an unshakable truth. Instead of shame and dishonour, you will enjoy a double portion of honour. Everlasting joy will be yours. God will faithfully reward you for the times you have suffered, and he has made an everlasting covenant with you. You will realise that the Lord has blessed you, and you will be overwhelmed with joy in the Lord your God. For he has dressed you in the clothing of salvation and draped you in a robe of righteousness. You are adorned in hope and joy for the future. He will show his justice to the world, bringing righteousness and life everywhere. That is not brokenness. That is our identity right there. His justice, his hope, his restoration, his redemption has the power and the authority to supersede any and every moment and identity of brokenness in our lives. It's time for us to cast aside those labels we've carried, those identities that we've held on to that are founded in ideas and concepts and experiences of brokenness. You are not a strange horse. You are a beautiful, magnificent, and wild zebra. It's time to prophesy hope and wholeness to your mind, body, soul, and spirit. I'm going to get the band up here, and I just want us to have some time and space to worship, to sit, to reflect in a safe space. We walk out of those doors and we get hit with the busyness of life, and messages like this get lost. Take the time this morning as the band plays to let it sit, to let it settle, and to let God start speaking. I really felt these particular words to speak out over us today, and I cried writing them, so we'll see how I go. You are not broken. You have never been broken. You have been through some stuff, and you can feel broken, and you can experience brokenness. But you, yourself, you are not broken. You are his beloved, and you are being restored.